All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is Thursday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, New York, and that means it's another episode of the MSP Initiative. Today, we have Clay Wilkerson from NewCloud Networks on the line, and we're going to talk about the real, all cap, situation with Cloud Circa 2020. How you doing, Clay?
George, I'm doing fine. How are you?
Oh, cutting down trees, putting up fences, getting ready for whatever the next thing that's going to happen, right?
Moving and shaking. That's right.
Yeah, I'm in Philly. So where are you based out of?
Denver, Colorado.
All right, Denver. Hopefully things are going well and you're not getting too much of that air coming over from the California side.
We had some weird smoke yesterday, but today's pretty clear.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I mean, of course I'm an avid football guy here, and Pennsylvania just finally opened up a little bit to have some fans in the stands. So Eagles at Steelers this weekend. How do you like that?
I like that's a good matchup to have some fans in the stands for sure, right?
Yeah. See if I can find a way to get there, maybe, sort of. So let's for people who don't know who you are, never met you before, never ran into you at an event pre-COVID, why don't you give everybody kind of walk down memory lane? How'd you get started in the business? How did you get to today, right? I don't know if all the way back to school days, but the floor is yours. Let's hear how.
Thank you. Thanks for the platform, George. Yeah, I been working in channel for 7 or 8 years. First in the financial space and credit card processing, and cut my teeth there, and then moved on and worked at PAX 8 after a good 3 or 4 year stint at Mercury Payments based out of Colorado. Was sold several times. WorldPay, FIS, they're a huge company, but PAX 8 was the real cloud side that I got into 3 years ago now. Wonderful experience there. Led me to this vendor at NewCloud, and that's what I am. I'm doing the senior channel manager for anything channel related. So it's been a weird time this year, obviously, right? Being able to get out, but excited for a cool Channel Strong Road show next week that I think I'll see you at.
Oh, there you go. I had to unmute there. Totally excited for that, to get back out on the road for sure.
Yeah.
Obviously we had a pretty cool tour the first go around, and looking for safe and cool round two. So
sure.
So number one, Global Pay. Man, if you ever had to go through a chargeback with Global Pay, you end up like me. No hit.
Yeah, WorldPay is probably the same deal too. WorldPay, GoldPay, they all have that. Credit card processing is a weird space, I'll tell you that. But I did the APIs.
We all need it, and something about IT being a high risk industry for credit card processing. Is that true?
They're all high risk, George. Exactly.
I got the game there. All right. So 2020 has forced. Fast forwarded is probably the right term, right? On the button, on the whoever still has the VCR, DVD player, DVR remote control, fast forwarded. So
yeah,
generally speaking, the state, from my view, the state of the cloud 2020 edition from an MSP standpoint is, if it's a SaaS app, it's already in the cloud. We get that. If it's Office 365 or Microsoft 365, we get that's cloud-based, although Microsoft's had some bumps in the road, especially over the last 2 weeks.
Thanks, Teams, right?
Teams, email, OneDrive, all of the above.
Right.
So, but generally speaking, when it comes to infrastructure and plumbing, less than 70%, or a little about 70% of MSPs out there aren't doing public cloud for their infrastructure, right? They're not doing AWS or Azure, Google, or Alibaba if you're over on the other side, or some IBM, whatever, right? Everybody seems to either be in a situation where it's still a premise-based box, or they're trying to do some sort of public or private cloud variant in a colo with servers in the rack on their own. Tell me I'm right or wrong.
Right. Seems correct to me, George.
Okay.
Right on the button.
Okay, so back up. I feel like I mean, again, I started in the IT business back in 2000, 2001. Symantec was king back then, right? You still
Right.
had tapes going on. You still, you had external drives starting to kick in. But generally speaking, when it comes to backup, the concept is you put this on-prem box, right? And you try and do this, backing up locally. And then obviously your hope then is to then shift to a third location for the DR part of it, right?
Offsite, sure.
But business continuity, backup, disaster recovery, they all kind of got jammed together. Now with 2020, I think that they've been decoupled a little bit, right? Because business continuity had a little bit larger of a feel. So,
Especially with Workstation and Office 365 backup for those remote workers. Yeah.
so we keep on hearing. Everybody should go to the cloud. Drop your on-prem servers, Azure. I think and again, I don't want to, speak your mind, but in my position, I think part of the problem is, and if the last 2 weeks haven't made it super obvious,
Right.
if you put infrastructure in the cloud, it's not backed up, but automatically, right? You have to do something with that to protect that workload. So whether it's on-prem, whether it's private cloud, whether it's public cloud, I think that there's this marketing, message that's broken, right? Where it's, oh, well, it's in the cloud, it's covered. But that's not true, Clay. Why does everybody perceive that to be the case?
Well, if you think about it from an Office 365 perspective, right, with Outlook, originally Outlook was backed up because you had the on-prem servers, right? And so they had Outlook and you had your Outlook servers. But now today, Office 365, that was a gap as well. They would be transferring to Office 365. Microsoft only kept your data for 30 days, and they weren't transitioning that back up to the cloud as well, like they were doing with, let's say, an on-prem server. And even still today, like you said, 70% of partners and MSPs out there, IT providers, aren't providing or utilizing cloud infrastructure. And either there's a barrier to entry, for instance, with Veeam, the software that we use, right, where you have to have that infrastructure networking in place to be able to sell that product, right? Or if you want to use Azure or AWS, it's possible, but it's more expensive. So being able to have that infrastructure available, which is hardware, out in different locations, co-locations as well, public, private, all the above. But I think there is a gap when speaking to hosting an offsite, right? So you can still have your on-site servers that are hopefully up to date on software and their OS is compatible today. If that stuff's running out of date, right? Fingers crossed. If that stuff is running out of date or is up to date on software and the hardware is up to date, then why not keep that on-prem server and then have an offsite backup? Why wouldn't you have that offsite backup to make sure that you can replicate that data when something does?
But I think there's, if you look at the marketplace, right? You
Sure.
have the guys that package it, wrap it up, tie a bow on it, charge a premium.
Sure.
Your hope now is that you're only, popping in when there's a problem, or at least that's the marketing message. Okay?
That is the message. Sure.
That's this side, right? Then you have the guys who are like, why should I pay this premium? I'll put some servers in the rack. I'll get some software. I'll do it on my own and hope that, number one, the cost savings by doing it and not paying the premium, I'm not going to back pay in time, right? Now, let's talk about that situation for a second.
Okay.
If I said, hey, I want to back up, I want to be the Office 365 backup, right? I'm going to take servers, put it somewhere, maybe a colo, maybe my garage, who knows.
Right.
I'm going to start backing up that data to this infrastructure that I control or I'm renting space in.
Mm-hmm.
There's time, there's upkeep, there's depreciation, and now there's liability, right? Are you now responsible for the data that's now on
Sure
there?
you are. Sure
right?
you are.
And number 5, security, right? Now you have
Security and maintenance. Right.
So in that premium decrease that everyone up front in hard dollars thinks they're not spending, isn't the problem all of the things we just mentioned? Like, how do you actually calculate that?
That's a great question. I haven't calculated it for myself, but you see partners out there trying to maybe putting that money up front to build those, right? Build that location for all their customers so that they can charge the premium themselves. If that's what you're speaking to, right? You know,
I
I
mean,
think,
but I run into guys all the time. I was actually talking to a guy that I talk to regularly, an MSP out of Florida,
mhm,
and he's like, listen, I was looking at Office 365 backup options. There's a lot.
there
Obviously, I
are,
need to have something. And
right.
it's like, I'm going to make a boatload if I just
Do it myself.
do the SaaS subscription for the licensing of the software, put
Mhm.
servers in the colo, and just have it go there. And I'm like, hey man, how do you monitor that? Are you covered from a liability
Right.
standpoint? Like, is it secure, right? Because all of the same challenges occur, right?
That is correct, and I think that's a headache that I wouldn't want to put my customers through. Right? What if something did happen? That liability then is on you. And I think we're seeing that shift for a lot of partners today. Um, you know, e- either taking that liability off their hands by getting their customers to sign things like, "Hey, I offer this product to you. This is something that is compliant with your industry. It's something that you should do, and I've put it in front of you. If you don't do it, then that liability is on me unless I have you sign this paperwork." And that is real. We're seeing that move and move and move and move. I saw it when I was in the credit card processing space, where these partners were making good money on their basis points that they were getting on their transactions. However, they held some of the liabilities if they weren't getting their customers the information they needed. And I think that could roll right into where we are today into the IT provider space. You're you're liable if something does happen. If there is a breach and this data gets out on bigger customers or even smaller customers to this day, what happens to you as your company? Are you going to make it through that breach, right? I mean, the customer alone, are they going to make it through the breach? But then you have your company and all the different customers that you provide services for. There's a lot of different customers that could be hit by ransomware, taken advantage of, or in this case, hardware locations that you feel like you're saving a upfront cost on, right? And being able to build that yourself, now you're controlling that liability for this said co-location rack space.
Right. The other challenge here, like, let's go to another example, right? I put my customer in AWS, Azure, Google, right?
Sure.
And okay, so I've just taken my metal and I've moved it to the right. Great,
Right.
fine. But
Right.
I now need to back up that information somewhere, right?
Sure.
So at the end of the day, I either pay the provider, Azure, AWS, Google, to back up that data to a different zone, region, data center, maybe, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
that's you can back up to the same data center, you can back up to another data center.
Yeah.
If you put all your eggs in one data center and that data center has a problem,
Good luck.
you have no
Right.
spare tire, right?
You're right.
So now these people come up and they're like, okay, fine. I'm going to now take software and I'm going to replicate that data from public cloud back to, again, metal somewhere else.
Right.
But how easy is that to do? How hard is that to manage? How quickly can you restore in the event of an issue? Like, the RTL, RPL, right? Whatever you want, those
Right.
terms. And then how do you manage all this? Like, I'm mentioning back to that MSP I was talking to in Florida. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
so you're gonna have a different solution for your Office 365 backup. You're gonna have some people have the on-site BDRs if you have the metal on-site. Then you're gonna have some people in the public cloud with a different package replicating back somewhere else. It's like now you got three things completely separate, don't look anything alike,
Right.
and you're
That your
trying
techs
to
that your techs have to be experts in, right?
manage.
And all three of those different locations. And your billing is a nightmare with having three different providers. So just to mention that, but you might want to also mention these ingress and egress fees, right? And what that could cost, whether you're sending a hardware device to the customer to put their data on and sending it back, or if you're just doing it in the cloud. I think, you know,
I ran into a small customer here by me who was like, yeah, I'm just gonna buy a kit from online like a Synology or a QNAP, throw some hard
right,
drives in there,
right.
send it off to AWS, and I'm like, until you download something.
How
Like, you
much does that
never
cost
think
for them
about
to
that?
take
He's
it?
like, I
Right.
didn't do that. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you need to calculate the outbound because the inbound's free. It's like New Jersey. It's free to go into New Jersey. You get told to get out, right? Now they're taxing you to get out of the state.
If you
So,
want to leave, sure. Yeah, and
so
I think that's kind of the the fees and the shadows, right? What if you have that data on site and you want to move providers? Then you have to take it off and put it on another location. They're going to charge you for that as well. It's almost taking your data hostage, right? And you got. I think that's part of the question you need to ask some of these software vendors, right? Instead of having to do it yourself, let's hope that they're actually looking at different locations and hopefully they can bundle those different offerings under one provider, so that they are able to manage that in one location. That's been the goal for a while, right? But
Yeah, so then I go back and I'm like, well, these guys are like, dude, we're making a boatload doing private cloud, right? Doing the servers, flat fee, what have you.
for ourselves, sure.
And I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, well, that's great. I was like, the second you start offering it to your customers on infrastructure that you bought, you own, you control, right? The colo is just renting you a cabinet. It's like a lease, right? For an
right.
empty apartment with no
It's in
furniture.
another apartment building, sure.
So have you gone back and actually re-racked your liability insurance at all to cover this? Like, have
Right.
you had that conversation, or did you not think about that?
Or the hardware alone, right? Not just the liability for the customer, but what you're spending on, this said apartment and this hardware that you invested into. Is that part of the liability insurance you have for your business? Is that assets that you've allocated towards your insurance for your company? I think those are all big questions.
A lot of angles. So
Yeah,
basically, what I'm trying to get at is that like, as much as the word cloud seems homogenous, right? Oh, it's in the cloud.
sure.
It's really messy.
It
If
can
you
be.
haven't figured out the recipe, you could be even worse off from a mess, scalability nightmare, management nightmare than you were with sending out the truck to the customer site, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it all comes back to a network and infrastructure that is actually hardware too, right? We were talking about this cloud, right? It's all really just located elsewhere, and it's all hardware and the on-prem itself. It's just in managed locations that have their own liability insurance and that are paid for.
We've seen the T-shirts, right? It's just somebody else's server.
Sure. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get it.
It's the same thing, and so it's important to realize that those fees are managed by spreading those fees across all your customers, right? So if we're talking about one MSP or one IT provider that wants to offer these things to all their customers, I just don't think they have enough customers, whether it's 50 or 100, to manage those fees that come with it. And are they properly insuring that for themselves and covering that liability? That can get really expensive. And then where is that premium that they're getting every month, right? Where is that margin that they're expecting to get for paying up front for that hardware themselves?
Okay, so we talked about the three scenarios, right?
Mm-hmm.
On-prem infrastructure needs to be replicated elsewhere for backup DR purposes. We
Right.
talked about SaaS backup, right? I mean,
Sure.
obviously Microsoft 365 is the big elephant in the room, but there's other SaaS solutions other than Microsoft.
Right, depending on the industry, you're right.
And then obviously we said infrastructure all in the cloud, right? And that's not a be all end all.
No, it's not.
What from a backup standpoint, what else am I missing from a cloud standpoint?
Well, I think you think the 3-2-1, right? You have your on-prem, you have your workstations and SaaS software, and then you have your infrastructure that you can replicate offsite. I think you should be able to and should be handling all three with a backup standpoint, especially right now with 2020 and where we're at and people working from home. God forbid. I'm in an office today, right? But I don't have a lot of people around me, so I can do that. But being able to just roll with the times that are happening, right? And downtime is more important now with everybody spread out than it would be, say, if everybody's still in the office. And I think that's a big portion of discussing this backup and DR with your customers, right?
So let me ask this question, right? We talked about these three specific scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
I know obviously there's one-offs in any particular circumstance, but when it comes to how quickly you can come back, right? Like, let's say Microsoft's down. Okay. Well, if you're in two Microsoft data centers and Microsoft's main portal down, well, I guess you're screwed. If you're in multi-cloud, right? Let's say you're in AWS and Microsoft. how quickly can you go from this is down to this is online and everybody's back to work? Realistically, like, isn't that's part of the discussion, right? Because there's
Well, and
different
what part of
answers.
it needs to be very quick and you know is very important data, or does it have to be everything needs to be, you know, replicated, right? I think that's a new part of the discussion. You see across, you see a couple of these vendors starting to change their outlook on how they're offering their products. Is it all backup or is it all DR? I don't think that's the case anymore, right? Do I have to replicate just, you know, mission critical data is what we're talking about here, and I think Microsoft is absolutely one of them. Your Outlook, but that then again, we were all part of that 6 hour, you know, worldwide outage. Those emails still came in, and the emails that I sent still went out if you were on Office 365, right? If you had your Outlook on-prem, then you didn't get to capture any of that data. And I think that's an eye opener for your backups today, right? Or having cloud be your software of choice, because even if you are down for 6 hours like they were, the emails that were sent to me still came in once they were back up, and the emails that I sent, they went out. So
Yeah,
um,
but 6 hours of telling everybody, hey, turn on Netflix, shut it off, right?
take a
I
half
mean,
day.
there's a cost to that 6 hours.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
So when you're talking with your prospect, your customer, I'm an
Hmm.
MSP, okay? I go talk to my
Right,
customer.
right,
The first question is, what do you have? How do I standardize it? How do I back it up? Fine. The
sure.
next question is business continuity. If there's an issue, how quickly do we get back up online? You know,
Hmm.
what's the cost of your people being down,
Right.
and what's mission critical? Okay. The third part, and especially for the regulated industries, is what if I'm a doctor and I got to hold stuff for 7 years? What if I'm in a regulated industry like finance, right? Stock trader, they got to hold
Hmm.
stuff for so many years. Like, how
Right.
do I inexpensively or affordably hold on to that data
Right.
without paying an arm and a leg to keep it?
That's a great question. You know, I think when you're talking about those regulated industries that have to have data for 7 years, right? Um, it's not necessarily it's not mission critical, but it is something that you have to make sure for your compliances are kept off site, right? Um, you know, I think a lower daily retention for your hot storage, right? What do I have to keep today that I can replace tomorrow, right? And then and get rid of, and that's your mission critical, I think. But then there's using S3 type storage or something else to archive, right? So that you can consolidate it. You can take that data to be a smaller size for your total backup, right? Because that is a big part of it. Is that these costs can add up, and if you're not controlling your backups, and that's the other side of it, right? If I have all this data that I'm putting together myself, if I'm not controlling what I'm keeping and storing or replicating offsite, those costs can add up very quickly. So I think having that's where NewCloud networks and other providers that help you with these continuities can do. Is like, well, depending on the industry, depending on the company, and what they're willing to spend on the product, what can we do to mitigate those costs, right? And what is needed for that. So
So again, that, you know, a lot of people, to skirt some of the costs on this, say, well, hey, I'm going to do my archival stuff on a box, a rack.
local, right? You're
Okay.
right, right.
But I'm just like, I'm trying to zoom out and say, again, I love standardization. I love cost savings. I love simplicity, right? I don't
Sure.
want it to be so complicated that I need 2.5 people to be up to speed on every single customer's, you know, blinking light that day,
Yeah.
right? So I'm trying to understand how to, like, zoom, you know, reel it back into reasonability, right? Because
Sure.
there's a lot of options. I understand IT is broad and there's no one road
You're
that
right.
is the answer. I get that. And I'm sure, you know, one thing that we didn't even talk about was bandwidth, right? I mean, you know, if you're trying to do this on your own, or if you're trying to do it from the customer's location, or if the customer's all, now distributed and from home, is it realistic to be able, to consistently get all these people up to snuff and not miss backup windows or replication windows?
Right.
If
And
you don't
getting
have
error messages and it's not happening, right?
right.
Right. And then what's the point of having that working? So I think that's the other side of it. Thanks for bringing that up, right? If you have a backup solution that's not doing its job and creating those jobs, then what is it good for, right? And I've seen it many a times where those jobs fail, or there's error messages and it's not happening, right? And that's a sad day for somebody that needs a file or folder backup. And
Okay. Fair. So
yeah.
as an MSP,
Mm-hmm.
we've all been pitched by every vendor underneath the planet. Single pane of glass. Does that
Right.
in this conversation, is that even a pipe dream? Like, is that even realistic, or is there actually, does that experience exist?
I believe that experience exists if you have the right vendor and the right partner and provider that can help you do that, right? I think it is unique and customizable for each customer, and that's why you do need somebody out there that can help you do those, right? So each industry, each customer has different needs. If we're talking about that doctor's office that needs that local direct and to cloud model for their DR scenarios, compared to, say, somebody that has mission critical data across their whole solution. I think both of those are really different scenarios, different customers, but can be worked in one single pane of glass for you as a MSP, and having all your customers managed under one plate. And then having all the different products that each customer may or may not need, right? So having the ability to provide all these solutions, but it doesn't have to be standardized like you were talking about across your whole customer base. Yes, that'd be great to give one stack to every customer that you have. However, is it realistic to say that you can do that? No. But can you manage it in one place? Can you utilize all those solutions in one location? I think so.
Okay, so you can manage it all in one location. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a good starting point. What about remediation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something's supposed to be doing something, it doesn't. How do I know it's broken, and how am
Right.
I able to go and start to figure out how to fix it?
Yeah. And then, or if you get too many messages, right? When we're talking about remediation, you're getting overloaded with those messages from the solution itself, and it's telling you, oh, this, you're having issues here, you're having issues here. Then it gets almost numbing to get all those emails. I think that there's a way to, with Veeam and with NewCloud, you can pick and choose which ones are supposed to go to you and just could go to text and be taken care of easily, right? There's certain remediation messages that you don't need to see, and they're going to come across several times a day, right, for different customers. So that's another great point, is being able to manage that messaging so that you make sure that the stuff that needs to happen for each customer is happening, and you're not getting, like I said, numb from all the messaging that's saying there's an error.
So, and then the question is, let's put the archiving thing to the side for a second, right?
Okay.
Obviously, we know some people need years of archive, but putting
Sure.
that to the side for a second, what is a reasonable, or what is the average retention so that you can go backwards? What have you seen out there?
I think just, depending on the business, but I think you can think just a week out, and especially if you're doing it every day, why keep it more than 7 days back? If you have what you need and it's happening every night or every morning before things happen, our standard is 7 to 14 days.
And then are you seeing a lot of people, especially with, virtual desktop, VDI, virtual,
Right.
That's starting to really take hold, right? Across all the cloud providers.
I think it should. Sure.
So are you seeing people backing up both the on-prem endpoint and the cloud, bubble, for, desktop for each user? Is that actually happening, or is that overkill?
It depends. Again, it depends on what you're needing, right? So when you're talking about your bandwidth and your network speeds, are you needing to do it for each customer? Do they all want to be replicated with one? Are you wanting the VDI? Are you wanting the other side of it, which is everybody uses the same resources, right? And whether someone is needing that time or not, or needing that bandwidth, I think that's where you decide for yourself. Now it is more expensive, right, on the VDA side to break up each workstation and have a separate workload per user. However, when times are really moving and you need that bandwidth, I think that's the best way to work it, right? It is RDS is a cheaper option versus VDI, but you'll see where it gets cheap when there's more people needing to use that data, right, and that bandwidth, or there's the actual backups happening during that time. So I think those are two big questions to ask yourself when you're talking about the VDI side, when you're talking about having your remote workforce using your workstation on site. But it's also easier to back up the VDI side or the RDS side compared to the VDI side. So I think those are two very big solutions, and that's where we're headed. I think that hasn't been much of a conversation until maybe end of last year, and what's going on this year is bringing this to spearhead. Do we need these solutions? What are the differences between the two? And for my business, can I handle having the cheaper option of the RDS compared to having each workload having their own space?
What about the from a backup standpoint, I can understand how it works. I'm not sure there's a continuity answer, right? If I'm backing up OneDrive, Teams, my mailbox, my Salesforce, my Google apps, my great, I can have a backup of it. But if those service providers go down, that doesn't mean that I can just flip a switch and it's back up and running. Right?
Not when the software's down, right? You're right.
So there's still another continuity conversation there. If or do you put a second email solution in place if 365 goes down? Do you back up your OneDrive to another solution to access if it's like? Are you hearing this conversation, or is this just over the top?
That's, in my mind, that's over the top, because those softwares have their own backup and replication that they need to have in place. It would be hard to move your MX records if Microsoft is down anyways to another provider, right? So that's a good, something to think about when you're thinking about having two different types of software for the same solution. But having that data backed up can, let's say something outside, that software goes down, but they also lose data, right? When they come back up. Being able to at least have your data for your customer, and saying, listen, this software messed up. It's not going to come back up fully like they expected it to be. However, I have that replication of that data here and backed up, and we can use it. We can use it when they come back up. I think it is a little overkill when you ask that. Having second and backup software is available.
What do you tell the customer who thinks they can save money by, if they have, let's say they have multiple locations, right? Like, oh, my server's over here, but I got this other location. Why can't I just put a server over here?
Put another server.
like this conversation happens more than you think.
I absolutely believe it does. Right. And that's for those bigger customers, right? They have more users, they have a bigger spend on all things data related. So they want to be able to cut corners where they can. And that is, in theory, in their mind, that is having an offsite backup. They have two different locations. What would you say to that? I mean, do you have any insights for what you tell these customers?
Listen, I always come back and I say, at least you start looking at the finance behind it, and you're like, all right, well, if this is my production equipment and I'm thinking this is my DR plan and backup, not only do I have to have similar, or not, if not more horsepower over here, because not only am I holding to data longer over here, right, but I also need to flip the switch as the backup plan on this side, right? So right, now all of a sudden I'm doubling up on my costs. And am I putting a separate data connection between the two offices just to replicate and back up that data without clogging up my main internet connection, right? I mean, that's a
Right.
legitimate concern, especially if they're, depending on the business, right? They could be sending data 24 hours a day just to be able to do it.
Back and forth, right? And that is that connection secure too? Are they actually having that the connection between the two locations? Is there some security behind that? And then can you manage those servers efficiently without causing more issues, right? I don't think in theory it works because there are two different locations, but it's not a backup or disaster recovery solution. Um, it's just putting data in a different location.
Well, but off the shelf, it's not. You can make it that way, but it takes extra work, right? I mean,
And
it's
that's what we're talking about with securing it, managing the data, and then having the horsepower to retrieve it.
okay. So let's start getting a little bit gritty here, since we've talked about a lot of different concepts.
Okay.
Who is Veeam? I'm sure the name's been heard out there a lot.
Yeah, if it hasn't, that's a
I
weird
feel
thing.
like it's, and again, in the MSP space, we see generally two scenarios. Somebody who had a problem in their MSP, started a software company and went up. Okay. Or
That's my
somebody who came from the consumer space and said, hey, we can apply this to business, and then goes up. But on the reverse, there's the enterprise that comes down.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Veeam feels to me like it's an enterprise solution that's coming down. Am I
It
wrong?
absolutely is. You're 100% correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a solution that was, it is across almost 80% of the Fortune 500 companies already, right? And now they're finding ways to come down. They're 100% channel centric, so that's how they're doing it, right? They don't sell it themselves. They have their huge customers and these big whales that use it, and they're like, well, it's efficient, it works great. Can we make it for the SMB market? We can't. Partners can, right? So that's how they went around their model, and I believe you're 100% correct that it was. I think it's easier to come from your big fish down, right? Because they've seen all the issues, they've seen huge data spikes, they've seen these things happen for different customers, and are able to through over time make it a much more efficient product. I think it's easier to do it that way than consumer up.
Okay. So they took an enterprise solution. I believe they framed out some sort of MSP program.
Absolutely.
Right? Where
Absolutely.
they make it more, consumable at the IT provider level, right?
You're right. You're right. But there are
So,
barriers to entry for Veeam, right?
okay, so let's hear that. What is that?
Well, some of the barriers to entry are what we were talking about earlier, the infrastructure and the network to be able to have those. They don't provide that. Veeam doesn't provide that for the partners. So you're either having to spend the money up front for these for this hardware and the network itself, or you're finding a provider like NewCloud Networks that has spent that money up front, have the techs and the NOCs on site that can help you take care of that software and the SOCs that are, certified, right? So that's part of the VCSP program and that's the Veeam, the partner program is being able to have not only the infrastructure and the network to provide the different storages and different repositories, but also having the know-how and the engineers capable and architects capable. Yes, you can call Veeam just like you can call Microsoft, right, to get your help. However, right, another thing that you have to worry about is getting that in a timely manner for that customer that could be down and it is on fire, right? And not literally, but
So Veeam's MSP program, is there a minimum in order to start? It's software, it's licensing.
right,
I get that.
right.
I get that they give you no BDRs, no boxes, no hard drives, no.
How about that? Right, that's a little different than what we've seen out there in that space. So
Sure.
that's a big part of it. No, there isn't minimums, but there are tiered pricing where you can get better pricing if you're doing a bigger space, and if you are, just a starting out partner with Veeam, it is very expensive and hard to compete with other prices. However, we're a platinum partner with Veeam, so we can offer that savings to our partner network.
Okay, so if I'm an MSP, I want to change the way I'm handling cloud and cloud backup,
Right.
including SaaS. That's including DR. That's including cloud infrastructure backup. That's including on-prem servers that need to be backed up. All of the
Right.
above.
Right.
Veeam can, you're telling me, can cover and check all of these boxes
That's
in the
what I
end.
love about the most. That's why I signed on with NewCloud, is because Veeam can provide all those services all across the board. I think that's very hard to find, and I think that's why when you see the top tier down solution like Veeam, they have to check all those boxes because these big customers ask for that, right? And these big.
Okay. Is there a term, like, do I license it per mailbox, per user, per server, per VDI machine? Like, how does all of that work from a math standpoint?
For us, it's just per workload, okay, and you're talking about storage and then agents if you have workstations or uh, VMs that are needing to be backed up. So it is a per workload say cost mathematically, and it's very easy to utilize through us. I don't know how other providers
So
do that for us.
just to be clear, make sure there's no confusion. A workload is an entire Office 365, all users in one tenant.
Or per
A work,
mailbox, or
all
per
right,
mailbox when you're
per
talking about
mail.
Office 365.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now that user, it's not just their mailbox. It could be their OneDrive, their Teams, their, like, all the data
And I
associated
think
with that.
that's part of the workload, the storage, right? Is you have your OneDrive, you have your SharePoint, but then you have a per mailbox solution. So workloads could be servers, VMs, or workstations.
Okay. All
Mm-hmm.
right. Got it. And so it's licensed that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part of the component is, now that I have my main workload, my main production data, I have my software now to hook into that wherever it's at.
The agent
I now
license
need
should,
it. I now need a destination, right?
yeah, repository, and that's what we're talking about here. And so that is the biggest barrier to entry. Now, keep in mind, being whether you do it yourself, you have your own servers in your garage. They don't have an ingress and egress fee, and I think that's a huge offering for Veeam. But if you want to have a repository for a true be it backup and disaster recovery solution, you want to have locations all over the country, right? Um, and so that's where NewCloud comes in. There's other providers out there that are also platinum that offer these types of solutions, but the repository is the biggest portion of that, right? When we were talking about that customer that has 2 locations, theoretically, that's 2 different spots, right? However, when you were talking about off-site replication, I think it has to be strategically placed for natural disasters, for network issues that could happen throughout the country, like what we saw already. So having that capability across the whole United States, and we have some in Germany as well, for a Fortune 50 company that we provide services for, that we built, right? Having the capability of doing that anywhere you need to have it is
Okay.
something that.
So the repository is based on how long do I need my data, how many points, how often, right? I get
Right.
all of those questions.
Right.
How do you validate? Is this built into the software? How do you validate that the data that made it to the other side is actually good?
It's a great question. I think that's why a lot of people test this solution so much, right? Is to make sure that workstation backup, or that Office 365 backup, or even your VM backup is actually replicating correctly. And that's
Like, some
but
other solutions have, like, they fire up the VM, they take a screenshot of the machine. Some other
image
solutions,
based, right?
like, they'll go back and they'll be able to restore an email. One out of every so many items gets restored to verify. Like
Mm-hmm.
like everybody has a different way to say, hey, we've spot checked it and it's good. But
Well, a
that's
lot of
better than
partners
nothing.
write that in, and a lot of partners write that in for the customer. Hey, we're going to do this quarterly, right? We're gonna spot test this and show you that this is working, and doing test restores, even if it's not needed, right? Something may not have happened, but that's part of my job as the MSP for offering this service to you as a customer, is make sure I can do a test restore each quarter, show it to you, show you what it looks like, show how it really works. And I think that's why a lot of partners ask for, the 1 terabyte trial or a 30-day trial from us and from our distributor Pax8, is because they want to make sure that it works before they're throwing out. It's an expensive solution, right? And it's something that they need to know how to do when those things happen. So I think doing those tests, keeping familiar with the software, making sure these updates happen, and that you're still able to do those restores and doing those tests regularly is a big part of that, right? Because you can spend all this money, you can have these backups, but if something were to happen, are you ready for it, right? If you're not, give us a call. We can help you take care of that, right? But
Right, fair.
we
So
we'd,
so for
we'd rather have you doing those tests for
so for
each
somebody
customer.
that's never seen Veeam before, what is that process look like, right? Yeah,
You know,
to
it's
look at it, to open up the car door for the first time and
mhm.
say, I've never seen this dash. How do I figure out how to turn the on button, right? And I say that
It's,
I say that like it's funny, but sometimes you get into a car and they move the on button all the time. I
my
swear to
goodness, yeah, and or the park. Now today the park, you know, putting the car in park these days is different than it's ever been. It's a button instead of a knob. Anyways, yeah, you know, I think the easiest partners and customers that we deal with are people that use Veeam on site today and need the Cloud Connect side, the off-site side. It's the easiest thing we've ever seen. However, for somebody that's never been in a Chevy and they're looking at a Chevy Silverado, what are they going to do with it? So, you know, the Pulse portal and the Cloud Connect side of Veeam is new for a lot of these partners that maybe have not seen it. It's a Chevy upgrade, if you will. It's the GMC that just put the new iPad in their car, and they're like, I've never seen this
everybody's
before.
trying to be Tesla, right?
They're trying to move the needle, and they need to, right, if they want to stay relevant. So what we've done for our distributor Pax8, and we could do for any MSP that's a partner of ours, is we've made a portal that encompasses all these solutions that we talked about earlier: on-site, off-site, public, private, and hybrid cloud, and the Office 365 workstation backup, all the above in one portal. Veeam hasn't done that yet. Maybe they'll do that in the future. We've built our portals for our partners to be much easier to use. I think that's a big portion of that. I think the ease of use and the ability to manage everything in one location is something that we offer that maybe are different than other providers for Veeam. Another part of that solution is Veeam has a ton of things to try and use and products to use, right? We're talking about the ones that we offer today that are very easy to talk about, but Veeam has many more because they have these very big customers that they've used in the past. So maybe there's too many buttons. Maybe this looks like a 747 jet that it's got too many buttons to work, right? So, um, you know, that's another reason why we do a lot of testing with our partners and let them utilize the portal that we built, and then say, are you a VCSP already? Have you seen the Veeam portal? Does this look any different to you? Of course it does. It's a lot easier to manage and efficient to maneuver, right? Because they do have a lot of bells and whistles at Veeam, and I think that could be a pro and a con for a lot of partners. Some don't want that many solutions to be used. So
So does the centralized portal, does that hook into the PSA, the ticketing system? Like, can I start?
ConnectWise integrations, Cassé integrations, absolutely. And if you're a Pax8 partner, they also do a billing automated integration. So that's one of the biggest problems with Pulse today is it's not automatic reporting, right? You have to manually report it. Oh, I forgot to report my usage again. It's a big deal for Veeam. So we've automated that through Pax8. We also can help you automate that if you come through us directly. But you can you can do a sure backup now, which is basically a lab to check for ransomware and malware, being a huge need of ransomware has grown, right? I think it's a much bigger problem. Plus, they're not only going after these Fortune 500 companies anymore; they're picking and choosing anyways. Hackers are working from home; they've always worked from home, right? So they now they have the users at the house, and they don't have to go through the firewall on site, right? So it's changed a lot, and I think the lab to check for ransomware is something that Veeam does offer that maybe other providers doesn't
Is that
offer.
ransomware check just for server workstation, or does that also work for Office 365? Like, is it everything?
It is all the above, and I think that's really a cool add-on for Veeam today. But it also, that lab allows you to test these things out before you go to a live environment. We were talking about all these bells and whistles and all these buttons to press. If you're not testing these products in a lab environment, before they go live, that can really mess up your customers' data, and as a whole, you know, it would be something that you're here to be the superhero, and you turn out to be the villain when you wreck this customer's whole environment. So having these lab and test checks can also help with, you know, restore ransomware back into their environment, right? So it's good. It's Office 365 with emails. It's VMs and servers on site. It's the workstations, desktops or laptops. Those all can be lab checked.
So one thing that comes to mind, and I think even OneDrive to some degree, right? If you're a laptop user, and granted, not as many people are moving around. We're still in a pandemic, and I get that.
Right.
But put that aside for a second. Think back to 2019, early 2020, when people were moving around. I'm at home, I'm at work, I'm in the airport, I'm driving to the customer site.
Absolutely.
It's that workstation may not always be connected. So
or secure on a secure environment. You're 100% correct.
So how do we make sure that, like, how does the system work to make sure that that device does?
Well, that's what that backup is insurance in case this person is on a Wi-Fi that's public, and they're the hackers in the airport too, right? You can program your Veeam agents to back up when their power is on, right? So let's say that person's moving their computer through the airport, they get on a plane, they have to power down. Well, as soon as that power backs up, your program Veeam agent is back on as soon as that thing comes back on, right? So some of those agents don't do that. And I think, you know, in transition, when you're even leaving the office, when I bring my computer back to the house, right, I'm moving through that transition is something that you want to make sure that as soon as it's back on, or as soon as I power back up my laptop, that agent is working again for ransomware. But Veeam encrypts that backup in traffic, or so on a public Wi-Fi, they can't capture your data. So it is encrypted, whether I'm on Starbucks public Wi-Fi or DIA's public Wi-Fi, or, you know, even on the airplane while you're working and flying, it encrypts the network traffic. So even if you're on a public network, and I think we're going to see more of that. A lot of these customers are realizing that they can work from home. Their employees can work from home once this pandemic lifts, right? And people can work from anywhere, theoretically. They can travel the world and work from anywhere they want. And I hope that happens. That's the world I want to live in, right? But you also have to think about the security side of that and the network side of that, and not having all the other bells and whistles, these other deterrents like firewalls and things that are on site on your actual location or your network that won't be available and when you're traveling, or even in, you know, hotels or what have you, Airbnbs, whatever you might think of, that network isn't as secure as the one you have at the office. But that's why you have this type of insurance, these backups and disaster recovery. So if something does happen, you're able to restore back to a point that wasn't a problem. Sure. And I think that's being proactive with the solution. And I think that's why backup and disaster recovery is one of the most important, right? You can have all these insurance, you can have all this training for your, you know, security awareness training for emails, and you can have firewalls and everything that you need. But when the event happens, were you proactive in having that stuff backed up so that you could go back to a point that it wasn't, right?
Sure. Couple quick
it's just
questions.
a slap on the wrist instead of
I got you.
Yeah.
A couple quick questions that come to mind as we're kind of getting to the end of the time here. One, how easy is it to do something like a bare metal restore?
That's a great question. Depends on if you've, you know, used this solution and are ready for it, but it's extremely easy with Veeam. And I think that's the biggest selling point, right? It's been these big customer solution for so long that they've needed to restore. And it's not just a whole bare metal restore. What about just a file or a folder that needed? Both of those are extremely easy. Backup servers, you're just right click restore. I mean, that's how easy it is. You know, you can go to that replication, right click and restore for the server, and extremely easy for the workstation itself.
At what point, and is there an offering to do the seeded hard drive where you do the local backup, send it to the data center to get restored to just speed up that process? Is that still an option?
Yeah, if you don't have the bandwidth or the network to run those speeds, absolutely. The seed the seed restored is an option, and some customers use it all the time, right? They just don't have the network where they're at. Maybe they're even in a rural area that doesn't have even the capability speeds to do that, and it would be way more expensive and time consuming to do it over the cloud. So they can absolutely restore that and send it over. So they can take that data, send it over, and we can replicate it.
Yeah, and then lastly, is there a future where the mobile device, the cell phone, the tablet, the Chromebook, you see that as a device that will be backed up cloud-based, in the future, or is that not in the immediate foreseeable?
Absolutely. I use my phone more than I probably use my computer, right? When I'm talking about emails, when I'm talking about Zoom, Ring Central, my 40 token, my MFAs on here, everything's really mobile these days, and it's getting more and more mobile as we move through it. So, I started seeing providers offer not backup for the cell phone, but being able to manipulate a work cell phone, right? A lot of people have work cell phones these days, or at least the SIM card that's in your cell phone that you use today. Being able to clear that out if it was stolen or lost, right, is something that a lot of solutions are offering.
I know that's more of an MDM thing. I'm just concerned with, hey, since this is holding so much data now, is there a future where a Veeam or somebody else is going to, instead of just the iCloud or something like that,
right,
is there a future where you see this going into that type of solution?
Well, there's a reason why Veeam is already working on adding Mac support, right? I think mobile device is just the next step in that innovation. I think that's probably one of the reasons why they're doing it today. That's part of their 11 release, which is early 2021, is Mac support for your MacBooks. But we all know that PCs are more used in the workspace. Why would they do that? iPhone, I think.
Let's look towards that. Yeah,
I think so.
So it could be on the horizon, basically.
I think so, and I think that's what they're working towards, is because they know that people need more than just their workstations, their desktop. Now, hell, we're moving to laptops. Now we're moving on to the mobile devices, your iPhones,
sure,
your iPads.
Yeah, no, for sure. Clay, a lot to think about. I'm glad to hear that there's, kind of Swiss Army knife approach to this, right? One size doesn't fit all.
Love
we get
that.
But
yeah.
The fact that there's options out there is important for people to know, because more and more stuff's moving cloud and SaaS. But as we talked about earlier, if it's not managed properly, it can get very foresty.
and foresty in the woods. You're right. And I'm going to use that Swiss Army metaphor, by the way.
No copyright needed. How do people find you? How do they get to you? Where should they find more information?
Yeah, you can go to newcloudnetworks.com, or you can email me directly at cwilkerson, WILKERSON, at newcloudnetworks.com, and or sales at Newcloud Networks if you didn't get my last name.
Got it.
So,
well, I appreciate you coming on. So, maybe I talked you out. Your throat's all jammed now.
It's gone now. I won't be able to be at Channel Strong next week. It's gone.
Yeah. So starting next week, guys, anyone who's in, what is it?
Chicago,
Tennessee,
Nashville,
Missouri, Chicago, like that whole kind of middle America, northern middle America, where
Mid-Atlantic, they would call it.
Yeah, 2-week Channel Strong 2.0 tour coming at you. Feel free to hit Channel Strong MSP Initiative / Channel Strong Tour 2.0, and you'll find all the dates and the cities, and can request to join us.
Sade just put in the chat if you guys want to see it.
Oh, there you go. Very good. And then we're still going to be meeting our Tuesdays and Thursday sessions, 1:00 Eastern time. And we'll continue along the way. I think we started this in March, and every week we come up with two sessions to talk about something. So that's good news. This was recorded, everyone. You'll find this on the YouTube, the Facebook. Alan, we'll post the videos online so you can go back and post play. And you'll see all the videos that you can go backwards in time there. Thanks for watching, and catch you on Tuesday if we don't see you on the tour. Take it easy, guys.
Thanks, George.